All right. So I think we can begin 1 minute early, but it's just going to be a small introduction right now. So today in our webinar, we will talk about how to use Multilogin to scale your business. That's our topic for today. So generally, our agenda for today is we'll talk about Multilogin, how it can help, how does it work, what value it brings to your business. We'll definitely talk about proxies and how to choose a really good proxy provider and why selecting a good proxy is so important. We'll talk about IP quality, what to do, how to assess IP quality, and how to choose the right IP masking solutions based on a couple of techniques. We'll also talk about how to work in a team in Multilogin, and we'll also cover the juicy part for best practices, what you can do in your current setups, or if you're new, what you can start doing straight away to basically get as less bans and restrictions as possible. At the end, you will get a small bonus, maybe actually not a small, quite a big bonus for you guys for sitting and listening to me talk about Multilogin. And if you're interested, you can definitely get it. We'll talk about this bonus at the end. There's going to be a Q&A also at the end, so definitely write your questions. Some of the most interesting ones, if I see pop up in chat, I'll be glad to clarify as we go, so we can make it as a conversation. But more difficult ones I will cover at the end. Also, the recording will be available for you after the webinar itself. Okay, but before we go into, let me learn a bit about you guys that joined today. I want to see, have you used something like Multilogin before? If you can, there's a poll. There's a section for polls in the webinar. Just go down below on the right-hand side. There's going to be polls. And you can, there's a question, have you used Multilogin tool like Multilogin before? And if you can answer that, I'll be happy. This can help me kind of like tailor my content to your specific needs. All right. So another question I have for you guys, and the question will be available in the polls. What industry are you working in? There's going to be a question in the polls, so go ahead and please let me know. If you can tell me in which industry you're working, I can tailor our content today also towards more affiliate marketing, e-commerce, web scraping, crypto, or any other, so I can show a bit more examples in the industry that you're working in. I see, seller, you're a seller in Maker, you're in dropshipping. So essentially e-commerce. So if you're a dropshipper, write down, select e-commerce. Okay, I see actually a 50-50 split between web scraping and automation and a couple of others, e-commerce there as well. Oh, we actually have quite a variety of different industries here. That's totally fine. I'll be then just giving some examples from variety of different industries. Okay, so essentially Multilogin as a tool, and I'll quickly cover the basic parts of Multilogin, then we can go into more advanced sections. So essentially what we aim to do is we help entrepreneurs grow their businesses by providing a software for managing virtual browser profiles that websites perceive as distinct and real users. And with this thing, we aim to provide not only just those browser profiles that are unique to external website, but also real in the eyes of the websites. And here, this is kind of like what we aim to do. We aim to provide you a browser profile or browser instance, browser session that is perceived as distinct and real. Now, essentially, the old way, how would you go about it if you want to achieve kind of like this distinct and real emulation, is that the traditional way, you would basically buy various computers, you would set up virtual machines or virtual private servers, and then you would connect through these virtual machines or virtual private servers or computers to show the website that you're essentially kind of connecting to that website from different devices. Now, with Multilogin, it's no longer needed. With Multilogin, you simply install the application and you launch these variety of these browser profiles or browser instances. And basically, and the websites that you're connecting to perceive these browser profiles as completely distinct and real users. Now, I have Multilogin opened right here, and I have a couple of browser profiles open as well. And we can go to simply to a couple of websites to check like how websites perceive them. Now, as you can see, there is a couple of browser windows that I opened for Multilogin, and every one of these browser windows, the websites perceive as completely distinct and real user. We have a test website right here, which is fingerprintgs.demo, and we can see that every one of these browser profiles has a unique visitor ID, as they say. There we go. You can check it right here. And the main idea is that Multilogin kind of creates different browser profiles that are perceived by websites as unique and distinct users. Besides them being unique and distinct, Multilogin also heavily works on the part where it creates a natural browser profile. So it doesn't change too much to make it too suspicious. So when using Multilogin, it essentially masks these browser parameters in a way that websites perceive the window as a distinct and real user. Now, when we work with browser profiles, there are two important parts of the browser profile. The first is real and distinct browser fingerprint, and the second is cookies. And Multilogin manages all of that. It creates a browser profile that is real and distinct, and it also holds cookies and all other data separate from each of these browser profiles. So when I open every one of these browser profiles, each of these browser profiles is a separate container for this type of data. When you go to create a new browser profile, you also don't need to worry too much about configuring a lot of stuff that you may not necessarily have the technical knowledge of. But maybe you're very technical people here. We'll talk a bit more about that. But essentially, Multilogin will automatically create this distinct and real browser instance. Now, let's also talk about IPs. Now, we also have to like make a decision on which IP to use, which proxy to use. And here we have to make a distinction between residential proxies and data center proxies. If you're new to Multilogin, then you should know that residential proxies is the proxies that you should use. A proxy is simply a solution that changes your IP address. In Multilogin, you cannot change your IP address, but it does support a lot of proxy providers, pretty much all of them, and it makes browser fingerprints consistent with your IP data. Now, residential proxies are proxies that give an IP address of a real user, of a user that is basically using his home internet. Data center proxies, on the other hand, give an IP address that belongs to the servers. And you may, like from the definition of a data center proxy, you should understand that if a website sees that you're connecting through an IP that belongs to servers, it's bad. It's like, why the heck are you connecting through a server IP? Servers IP are usually belong to data centers and websites, so why are you even doing that? There are a couple of use cases, small use cases, corner use cases where data center normal users also use data center proxies. However, that's a very rare occurrence, and if it does happen, websites simply raise your risk scores. So residential proxies are essential. You still can use data center proxies. I'm not saying that these are totally out of the table, but if you are new, you definitely should use residential proxies, because to use data center proxies, you'll have to know quite a bit about how to assess IP quality, which we'll also talk about. And you'll generally have to have good experience with working with Multilogin and different proxy solutions. Now, there's a couple of residential proxy service proxy providers you can use. There's Smart Proxy, Bright Data, GeoSurf, Oxylabs. All of them kind of have something good about them. Some of them for some specific cases don't work. It's generally up to you to decide which residential proxy provider to use, but most of them are okay for general purpose, such as Facebook accounts, drop shipping, on e-commerce websites such as eBay, Amazon, or Etsy. Generally, they are good for this, but These also can be quite costly. And if residential proxy provider is something that is not in your budget, you can use something different. You can use a USB modem, and you can use a simple USB stick. Now, what you do here is just you plug in that USB stick in your PC, you get an IP address, launch a profile, work within that profile, and then you basically take the plug out, turn it back in, and launch another profile. This will limit you on the amount of simultaneous browser profiles that you can work, but it is a very cheap and good solution. It will provide you with a unique residential IP address, and you can work, and the websites will still perceive you as distinct and real device coming from a unique location with having a unique IP address. But you can also set up different proxy farms if you really want to. There's a couple of guides on the internet you can do. If you're really interested in how to do that, and you have the time it takes to make your IP farms of different USB sticks, you can contact our customer support. We can send you some guides how you can set it up. They look like this. Another thing we have to think about is also assessing the IP quality. Now, this is very, very crucial. Yes, it's like since Multilogin already masks majority of browser fingerprints, pretty much most of them that are used by websites, you do have to make some due diligence on finding a good IP address, because usually proxy services, they don't care too much about the quality at some points. They kind of just give you an IP address and then you can connect to. So checking IP quality is something that you should be doing. I'll give you a quick example how this can be done. For example, I have a couple of profiles open right here with different proxy providers. For example, this one is connected to United States. It shows me an IP address, and it also shows, like, for example, if the IP has been abused. This is the website that you can use to assess if the IP address of a proxy is good. For example, let's reload this. There we go. So it also says no risk. Here it also says no risk, but for example, for the IP address that I'm using from Norway, for example, it also doesn't says. So you can use a couple of other websites. You can use a website called PixelScan, and it also can show you. For example, this is a residential IP address, and here you can see the ISP is Optimum Online, which is an internet service provider in United States. It's basically like an internet service provider where, right, hello? 1, 2.
I can hear you, but I think maybe for some people they can't.
Right,
can also hear you.
Right, okay. So if you don't hear, just all right. Just tell me in the chat if something's wrong. I can adjust. Right. So here on this browser profile, we can see that the ISP is Optimum Online, which is a residential IP address, but we can see that IP is also blacklisted in 4 databases. Now, whether it's good or bad, it's a really good question. Generally, if you have the IP address blacklisted in more than 5 databases, then this is quite bad. You also have to check and experiment to see, but the reason why the fact that the IP is blacklisted is not necessarily bad is because it happens to normal users, and websites will not block you purely on this data alone, because they are at risk at blocking other users as well. But let's, for example, check this IP address, which is a data center IP address. And here we can see the internet service provider is Lease Web, which is a server company, data center company. And we can see the IP address is listed as anonymous network or as a hosting provider. It's also listed in 1 database. I also have a very, let's say, I'm sorry, very bad IP right here in this one. And we can also check information about this. Like here it shows like it's such a good IP address. On this website, it also shows like, oh, it's quite good. It's residential, everything's good. However, when we go to google.com, yeah, well, first of all, it doesn't load properly because it's quite slow. But if we give it some time to load, we'll see a really big problem with this proxy. And what it usually shows when you test this type of proxy, and I will not tell names of which proxy provider it is, but there are problematic proxies, and even residential ones have problems here. So if it allows me to load, we can see that Google totally blocks this and thinks this IP address as a robot. And the thing is, these basically IPs are over abused. And these basic checks, like checking the IP address for internet service provider, and you should also test even existing proxy providers such as Bright Data or Oxylabs, if they give you the proxy of a residential of an ISP, of an internet service provider. You should check that, because sometimes they're sneaky and they can give you IP addresses of data centers. So you should definitely make some audits and checks of your IP addresses. And guys, if you are not doing this right now, you should definitely do this. This can help you increase your success rates. I know that the top affiliate marketers, dropshippers, they do this. They do their own due diligence. And as a result, the path to success is actually just having real and distinct browser fingerprints with multi-login and having a good quality and a unique IP address. This, just taking care of these two things can make a big difference in your work. Guys, can you tell me what is the size of your team? I have also a couple of things I can talk about in multi-login. I just want to know, should I cover that or no? Tell me in the poll, what is the size of your team? Do you work in teams, or you generally work alone, or do you have a big team? Just go navigate to the polls section down below, and you can see, like, you can answer the poll, the question. Seller maker is 17.5. 0.5 is who? Seller maker is Doc. He makes moral contributions. Okay, so generally I see there are a couple of people who work on a team. I'll go through these functionalities quite quickly. Generally in Multilogin, you can share browser profiles and folders, and you can also set specific permissions. This way, if you need to work in a team, you can delegate specific groups of profiles to other users. Generally, it works like this. You would have a team or scale plan. You would go to my account and, sorry, not my account, team members. And here you can invite a new team member. And you can put the email of this new team member, create a password, and send the password to them. And then you can share these browser profiles, profile groups with specific permissions. So for example, you want to create group 2 with launch and edit, and then in that group, they can launch, edit, and create profiles. And of course, you can transfer between groups if you want to give access of profiles to specific people. So I have a couple of profiles. Let me just close them a bit. You will have to close between switching. And as you can see here, I also I have with this particular account, Stan plus webinar, I've shared 2 groups. And if you go ahead and switch to this account, in this account, you'll see I have access to these groups, and within this group, I can launch, edit, and create. And you can also launch. For example, you have some virtual assistant where you don't want them to tamper too much with browser profile settings. This is where you would share this group with launch only permission. And you can also like give them access to a group where they can both launch, edit, and create. So in big teams, this should work quite well, where you don't need to kind of share the whole account credentials to them. In team plan, you have up to 4 people. In scale plan, you have up to 8 people, and you can also get additional team member seats for 30 euros member per seat per month. All right, guys. So like a more advanced section is coming. How well do you know? How well do you understand browser fingerprinting and proxies? Can you tell me what's your experience? Why I want to know about this is because I also have a couple of quite advanced content. So if you could share information for me, I could maybe use better wording, similar examples, so you can understand the concepts better. You can answer the question in the poll section. Again, it should pop up. Just click, and there's going to be a question which you can answer. All right, I see. So a couple of you actually have some understanding, and some consider to be an expert in the area. Awesome, really cool. So let's continue. One thing very important to do, and this is something that is very, very relevant for the majority when you're for the majority of you when you will be working with e-commerce websites or affiliate or advertising accounts. You need to gather third-party cookies, and essentially, third-party cookies is a concept that Facebook, Google, Amazon, and or any other big website, they know about your history of know about your browsing history, even when you don't have an account with them. And the way they do it is that they have these scripts placed on many of the websites. For example, a Facebook pixel is placed on 17% of all websites out there. Google Analytics is placed on 50% of all known websites. And generally what they do is that since the script is placed on different websites, they can place their own cookie there. And when you come back to Google, for instance, or Facebook, they can read that cookie that they placed in your browser, and what they will see is that they can see your browsing history. And if you're creating a new profile, a new browser profile, then websites can see that you're pretty much empty. You have not went to any other website, and that is a problem. That's a foolproof way how websites can understand that you're, let's say, a new user. And to increase the success rates of your operations, of your businesses, you would need to crawl third-party cookies. Now, you can use Cookie Robot for that in Multilogin. The functionality is generally quite simple. You would select the browser profile from here, and you would click Run Cookie Robot. You would put the list of links, and essentially you need to launch on websites that have third-party cookies. If you're doing it for Google, then pretty much you can you can just crawl around maybe 20 or 30 websites, and you're guaranteed that some of them will have Google cookies because everybody's tracking online activities using Google Analytics. And yes, and for Facebook, you would have to maybe search a bit to find those websites that have these Facebook pixel. There is a tool I will talk at the end that you can use to find these websites. But generally, it's quite simple. You would place a list of websites right here. Select whether you want the Cookie Robot to close the browser profile after it has finished crawling all provided links, and then it will save with all of the needed cookies. Now, a lot of you also ask is that how long you need to crawl the websites? The thing is that it's not very important how much you do it. The most important one is the age of cookies is the most important aspect. You would have to, like, the best case scenario, what you would do is you would, let's say on Monday, you would launch a couple of, let's say 20 to 30 websites to crawl. You will close it. And then on Friday, you would go and maybe register or create or log in with account. The age of the cookie is what matters, not necessarily the amount of them. Because after some point, like you can crawl for 1 month every day for 1 hour per day. You can do that. And that would be, of course, like super good behavioral data that can increase. But websites typically, such as Facebook and Google, they don't do that. Up until some point, it doesn't really make sense for them to put more trust into that. So age of the cookies is the key. And you can even go away with like crawling it for 1 day, for 10 minutes, and then in a couple of days, start to do it again. Go ahead and do what you want, register an account or launch an ad campaign, so on and so forth. Now, this is actually really good and best for new accounts and existing accounts. If you have a new account, definitely do that, because when you go to on registration page and when you go to the registration page, and Facebook or Google will see that you are totally empty, you don't have any cookies, that can be a way for them to increase the risk scores. That might necessarily ban you, but it will raise some risk scores. And if you are also importing existing accounts, whether it through if it's through just logging in using credentials such as username and password, it is also advised to do cookie crawling and gathering these third-party cookies, because logging in from a new device with no cookies is also kind of problematic. You can use Facebook Pixel Helper, which is an extension in Chrome. You can use it to find websites which have Facebook Pixel installed. Another thing you can leverage is definitely mobile devices. In Multilogin, you have access to a mobile device, and the mobile device essentially emulates the Android browser. I have a browser profile open right here. It's mobile, and when you launch this browser profile, it will essentially emulate and be seen by websites as if the user is accessing this website from a mobile browser. We make sure that all the browser fingerprints that websites can use to identify if it's a mobile are covered here, including battery API, even sensors and fonts. Everything is basically covered in terms of browser fingerprinting. And as you can see, you can like when it loads, you can use this to launch mobile browsers. There you go. You even have a touch screen over here as well. Now, the key important part here is how can you leverage that? And the way that you leverage is that you keep, for example, you have a Facebook account, one Facebook account where you run advertising, or you have an e-commerce account where you have an additional seller account. What you do is that you log in with the same account to both a desktop browser profile and a mobile profile. This will signalize to a website that you essentially have two devices. And judging and based on our research, we see quite a lot of people like the normal distribution of users usually fall into category where they have more than two devices logged in, and this can essentially give a better boost to and better success to your accounts. For example, on PayPal, what they require you as one verification step is actually to have like a mobile instance. So this can definitely add some trust scores to your accounts. I have a quick question from Seller Maker. Does it emulate EMI? That's a really good question. But the thing is that we are emulating browsers here, and websites do not have access to EMEI. They don't have access to it. So as a result, we do not emulate because there is nothing to emulate. We don't mask this at all. So it does not. Websites simply don't have access to it. They only have access to EMEI only if it's an application. If it's an application installed on the device. Definitely also leverage existing accounts. Now, this is where the industry is generally heading, because if you can find a good seller, or if you can find an eBay or Facebook account of your relatives, then definitely leverage that. These accounts have a lot of behavioral data, and generally Facebook and Google or any other website, they generally trust those accounts that have a lot of behavioral data in them. So definitely use them. And if you have this capacity to do that, definitely do that. There are a couple of sellers you can find on Telegram or other forums. There's a couple of websites also that provide these existing accounts with already existing data. And you don't need to spend your team's efforts on farming or like warming up these accounts. Essentially, if you use existing accounts, you can straight away open it, go make a listing or launch an advertising campaign, and they will work. So also think in terms of there is if you want to go from A to B, you can use a straight line. When you're managing multiple accounts, this is generally not the best way, and you kind of need to think a different way. You have to need to find a bit like convoluted way from A to B. And when I say from A to B, is that if you, for example, want to go and register an account, I don't know, on eBay, Amazon, or Facebook, like the general idea is that you launch a browser profile and go from A to B. That's how you do. But in our industry, the better way is to actually emulate a user behavior for that. And a quick example, if you're going to launch, for example, an eBay account, maybe it's not a good idea to just go to that website and go and register. Just open a browser profile, go to ebay.com and create an account. That's generally not a better idea. Generally not the best idea. A better idea would be, for example, to launch a browser profile, go to eBay, maybe select some items, and then simply close the browser profile. In a couple of hours or maybe even days, go ahead and then register for it. Go through Google, find eBay or Facebook account by typing in Google. This is also a good indicator for website that you actually came from a legitimate referrer. Top performers in our industry, they always do. Seller Maker, you say it's a cool idea. It's generally like with many websites like this. Many of our users, they just simply go and create an account, and that's where a lot of problems happen, because a lot of traffic can be filtered this way. Lavish, I saw your question. We can let me answer that at the end, if that's okay. Lavish, is it Lavish or Lavish? I hope I pronounced one of them correctly. So generally, top performers, they experiment with a couple of ideas, and you will have to experiment. You will have to experiment, and you have to experiment with a couple of ideas, and that's where most of the top performers win. Why top performers win is that they experiment with different stuff. You definitely experiment with different browser types. We know that, for example, registration works better on mobile Android browsers. Try it out. Google accounts, they work better with StealthFox browsers, with Firefox-based browsers. Test it out. See what works better for you. You can also test with different browser profile settings. A couple of things to experiment is definitely canvas noise. I'll quickly show you. When you go to create a new profile, definitely go to hardware settings and experiment with these settings right here, except WebGL metadata. These things sometimes are better to turn off, but in some cases, noise actually adds quite a bit of quality to your browser profiles, and fonts as well. Something that you may experiment just disabling. However, we are quite sure with fonts, we are quite sure our font masking is very strong in this part, but you may still find some websites work better if we totally disable this font masking. So definitely experiment with browser profile settings. Yes, and another quick thing is that you may also test with different hardware. We know for a fact around 2 years ago, there was a big trend that websites preferred Mac hardware. Right now, this is kind of like is slowly becoming it becomes equal with Windows or other operating systems, but you may also experiment with this. We also get some feedback from users that some particular, for example, video cards actually work quite good. Proxies and IPs, very important. Definitely don't keep your eggs in one basket. Don't commit to one proxy provider. If you have the budget, definitely have a couple of them, or if you don't, just experiment with different internet service providers for your USB modems. Account creation paths. As I already said, definitely think about how a normal user would go to a registration page. Maybe they would find eBay not only in Google. Maybe they would find eBay on some particular website. Or maybe if you're doing Facebook, for example, you can go to a specific blog page where there is a Facebook comment section, and from there you can register an account. It also shows a kind of like a natural behavior. So definitely experiment with different account creation paths. So as I promised, thanks very much for watching this video. Like for everybody who watched, we are giving a bonus 40-day trial of Multilogin Solo Plan. If you really want to try it out, give it another shot. Or if you haven't tried, you can go ahead and try it. Go through this link. You can scan the QR code. And you have to enter your access code, which is webinar Jan26, and yeah, you can get a 14-day trial of Multilogin Solo Plan. We will activate it within 48 hours, but you can we'll definitely try to do it faster. There's a click to action, claim free trial. Just click there, click here, and sign up, and we'll be happy to provide you with the trial so you can test it out. Hater is gonna hate. But all right. So I'll give some time for you to claim your trial, and in around 1 minute we can continue with a couple of questions from you guys. Nice one. How long time? Well, it will be live for 48 hours. But we will see. Maybe we will stop the giving out trial for maybe a bit earlier. So if you want a trial, just go ahead and do it right now. Nice one. We'll be happy for you to try out Multilogin. Okay, so there is a question from Lavish. Lavish, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, okay? Our websites have access to read MAC address of the system. No, they do not have. We have done extensive research on this. Not only we used not only we analyzed maybe around 100 websites that collect browser fingerprints and our users use. This includes all drop shipping websites, all advertising. They cannot physically access this, and they do not access MAC address. It is impossible to access MAC address. MAC address is essentially like a lower level stack of your network card. It's a lower network stack of your network card, and it's just physically browsers do not give access to. If websites would give, it actually will be a very big privacy scandal on the internet. So they do not. You can also read the article that Alexander, my colleague, has shared. Go read a more technical explanation why basically it cannot. But who knows? You know, the browser fingerprinting industry is evolving. At some point, maybe they will implement. But if they will implement, definitely Multilogin will also have masking for that as well. So I don't see any more questions. Guys, thanks very much for watching. You were very encouraging. It was an amazing audience. You were amazing today. Thank you very much. I hope some content was useful to you, and maybe something from here you can learn and improve your success rates. We'll continue our webinars. If you see a notification or email, you're more than welcome. More advanced stuff will come. Thanks very much.